The FDA is pretty, I wouldn't say lenient, but they're not really putting any guidelines into place. They're saying it's okay, but we're not saying it works. So there's no, you don't have you don't have any other information. You can do it.
It's not hurting.
It's not hurting. Yeah, it's not hurting, but we don't know that it works. And then the companies who are in the market, most of their products are not following a drug track.
Welcome to VNEW Health, powered by Arms Medical. I'm your host, Robert Greer. Today's episode is brought to you by Zyve 7 and Super Patch, supporting innovation in gut health and drug-free wellness. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Stay updated on the latest insights in pelvic health and regenerative medicine. Today, we have a fascinating guest, Leah Braddell, CEO and CTO of Data Biologics. She's a leader in AI-driven solutions for regenerative medicine, and Leah's career is a masterclass in blending technical expertise with business acumen. From her summa cum laude beginnings in biomedical engineering at the Arizona State University to her groundbreaking work in robotics and health analytics. She spent over 20 years at the intersection of technology, data, and healthcare innovation. Leah's path took her from pioneering implantable chemotherapeutics as a doctoral candidate to spearheading market adoption for Intuitive Surgical's Da Vinci robotic system. After leading analytics at eVisit, she founded STEM-powered solutions before launching Data Biologics to revolutionize how real data is leveraged in healthcare. Today, she's at the forefront of evidence-based medical marketing, using data-driven insights to help practices validate and optimize regenerative medicine solutions. So, our three key takeaways for today's conversation is going to be the power of real-world data and how Data Biologics is transforming regenerative medicine with AI-driven insights, and how evidence-based medical marketing, why real results, not just anecdotes, are shaping the future of patient care. And we're going to talk about how bridging science and commercialization, Leah's unique perspective in taking groundbreaking technologies from concept to market. So let's dive in. First question, Leah, your groundbreaking background is really incredibly diverse. You went from biomedical engineering, surgical robotics, telehealth, and now you're sitting here with regenerative medicine. What led you to focus specifically on regenerative medicine as your next frontier?
Well, I think that's the key word right there is frontier. I tend to like to be at the forefront of new technologies, especially where doctors are evaluating, does it make sense for them in practice? What's the potential benefit? And once they see that vision with the technology, how do you then actually make it work? Whether that's, communicating to the administrative layers in healthcare, to payers, or to their patients and their staff. Everything in healthcare is this team approach with many stakeholders that have to be influenced to move adoption of anything new. I think that's the biggest rub the technology world has with healthcare is everything takes so long, and they're always so frustrated because these ideas are great, but you run into first the regulatory hurdles, then it's actually a belief. You have to be able to drive belief amongst those who are going to adopt the technologies and then those who support them. So for me, it's really been about, moving from one frontier to the next and taking my super intense curiosity and just general like technical kind of mindset when it comes to all things in medicine, but also, the human side of me is I like to be working with teams and I like to be out right where the action is happening and working with people and, helping drive it forward. So that's really what drew me now to the space of regenerative medicine. It really is a culmination of everything that I've experienced from, studying it as my, field of choice in school all the way to, wow, this is an emerging field that has a lot of potential. But what it's lacking is structured evidence. And there isn't really a path to that because of the types of therapies that we're talking about, where there isn't a big pharmaceutical player at the table, or there isn't an intuitive surgical who's got, cornered the market in robotics with multi-million-dollar piece of equipment. We're talking about platelet-rich plasma, which was the beachhead in regenerative medicine. Lots of potential applications, but the reality is when we think about the technology around it, it's centrifuges, it's kits, it's syringes, it's things that help produce and process blood in order to deliver that back to a joint, or even on other things. I know you're in the female health space. We see platelet-rich plasma now being adopted for erectile dysfunction, pelvic floor dysfunction, hair restoration, wrinkles, not just musculoskeletal conditions. But the challenge with a treatment like that is you've got a low barrier to entry and not a lot of guidance. And without guidance, you can't bring the other stakeholders to the table, like the payers and the health systems, who can put more formality and funding for patients to access that. So today, it predominantly exists as a cash pay solution for most patients. And really, the patients are left to first figure out, is this the right treatment for me? Is this the right doctor for me? Is it going to work? And then on the flip side of that, the doctors have a huge variety of products on the market that are being sold, making promises. Oh, we can concentrate platelets in this way, and our product does, produces this or that. But nobody has evidence or the FDA claims to back it up. So each doctor is now faced with becoming their own researcher, which is very difficult to do in private practice. And the vast majority of solutions on the market, like ours, don't actually serve the physician. They serve the administrative layers in healthcare. So for compliance, for reporting, for billing, but none of that really applies in the space that we're in today. And what doctors want is clear evidence that supports that what they're doing in practice is working. And then they want a way to translate that to their patients, so that they can attract more patients who are good candidates for these treatments and ultimately move the whole field forward. Because with rising tides raise all boats, we can see the payers come to the table before potentially some of the more bigger industry titans decide to put some money behind the effort.
No, that's very true. And you think about like who's going to put it's like taking case studies, white papers. You go to conferences. It's what are you doing? What are you working on? All these physicians work in these mini silos, and a lot of them are doing the same thing or similar to it. But if you think about how much faster can you advance that when you learn from each other and when you share that information, and it sounds like your platform does just that. It allows the provider to have a place to go to. And so one of the things that I guess you could describe it as is Data Biologics, that you manage and you're the CEO of. It's kind of described as a next generation registry. Could you break that down and what that means and why you think that's a game changer?
Yeah. So I think we're next generation, but also a physician first registry. A lot of registries out there might be run by societies that are not profit, or they're very focused on one condition, one disease state, maybe one type of treatment. But really, the treatment registries are run by industry. And so what we're left with is, you know, not a lot of resources put behind the streamlining the building of these registries, first of all. But second of all, they're so narrowly framed that it doesn't apply. So you mentioned silos. Doctors and generally they only really adopt things that are adopted within their silo. And so they have to resonate with other peers that went through the same training as them, have the same kind of framework, patient population. So even if you're getting some insight out of a large society or a company, if it doesn't serve everybody, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So what we're doing is creating a way for anyone to build a registry for their practice, a registry for a collection of practices, or a registry that is agnostic to products and providers and even treatments. We follow what the physicians are doing in practice, and our recommendation is track everybody in your practice, because this isn't just exclusive to regenerative medicine that there's a need for it. It's actually there's a need for this in all things medicine. And most registries are not necessarily capturing the outcome from the patient, the long-term results. It's really just capturing this treatment was given to a patient at this time. So we're tracking like how often something is happening, but we're not actually tracking, was it effective, and what was it about that treatment and that patient that made it effective. And that's really what we're looking to mine is how can we produce high powered insights that even traditional research with phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 type clinical trials just can't get to, because they're so expensive and so narrowly framed around a certain kind of patient. It eliminates 99% of other people for knowing, does this going to work for me or not?
Spend
So
millions of dollars, right?
yeah, millions
Invest
of dollars.
millions on a very small
Yeah.
subset of people, and then you go, does this now expand to everyone in that particular space?
And that what you just described, that shift from, okay, now we have spent the millions of dollars, we got the FDA approval for this indication for these specific patients, and then it's now transitioned to the doctors and their license and what their practice of medicine enables them to do, which is look at the evidence, look at the trial, look at the indication, and then decide, all right, well, that applies to this small set of my patients, but understanding the science and the rationale for how the product or treatment is theoretically working, which we learn all the time, that things that were we thought set in stone 20 years ago, oh, turns out that's actually not true. We did some other studies and now it's this. So it's always going to be evolving. And when physicians get something that's in the market, now it's under their medical decision making. And what starts to happen is off-label use becomes prolific. And we see that like with the GLPs and all these different paths become an option because it's in the market now, and now it's under the license of the physician to decide. What the physician has to be prepared to do is defend their decision making and their rationale. And if they have their own data that they have collected, plus a pool of their peers who are doing the same thing as them when there is an off-label use being deployed, then the strength of their argument is even stronger.
Well, in essence, though, if you think about it, though, right, everything that they're doing is quote unquote off label. Because it's they're taking in the regenerative space, you're saying, "Okay, this amniotic, this placental member, this umbilical, this, connective tissue matrix."
Those are actually a very clear defined from the FDA right now. That's actually illegal to offer to patients, is to do any injectables where the source of the tissue is coming from not that person. It has to be sourced from that person, and it has to be minimally processed and delivered within a single treatment. That's the guideline of the FDA, which does mean that there's no question about it. There's definitely a gray zone with people, trying to get around the regulation, but it logically makes sense. It should be treated like a drug. You don't know how somebody else's tissue is going to interact with your body, and you don't know how high processing, whether it's enzymes being introduced or culture expansion of cells or gene therapies that are introduced. All of that is treated as a drug. But where we see the biologics space, the autologous type biologics, so derived from the patient's own source, the FDA is pretty, I wouldn't say lenient, but they're not really putting any guidelines into place. They're saying it's okay, but we're not saying it works. So there's no, you don't have it.
We're not gonna it's not hurting the patient.
Yeah, it's not hurting, but we don't know that it works. And then the companies who are in the market, most of their products are not following a drug track. They're following a 510(k) predicate device. It's really much more about the extraction, the processing, the injection is the place that they're they're playing in and the indications that the FDA has said this device is approved for extracting blood, whatever that might be. But it doesn't say this device is approved for treating osteoarthritis. That's nobody has that. So what the doctors are doing is saying, well, we think there's something to the cellular chemistry and just the generally how we understand the body's healing mechanism to work. And we believe that the cells are and the natural proteins and everything that the body produces, that's the drug. That's the best path forward for us to really leverage and harness. But nobody has the answer yet. And so what we see in our database is a wide variety of how these biologics are being deployed. Many times in combination, maybe it's multiple injections, maybe it's in addition to other devices like shockwave therapies or laser therapies. And so it comes back to individual physicians. They hear from their friends at a conference. They're, trying things with different patients or getting feedback from their patients that's demonstrating, oh, patients are improving. And now we have a platform that helps them put more power behind that. So it's not just a anecdotal, oh, Mrs. Jones did great. Well, what about everybody else? You don't know. Have you seen them again in a couple years?
Is it her pain improvement? Pain has been reduced. Has her mobility increased? What did you start with score wise? I mean, that's most physicians have those metrics in place, but they don't. Well, but they don't have a place to store them, right? They don't.
Or they've written it down on paper, and then the traditional process, if you're not in an academic hospital, is, well, hopefully a med student will want to come hang out in my office for the summer and
And need to publish.
yeah, need to publish and put everything into a spreadsheet. And then maybe we'll get somebody who knows how to work with the spreadsheet and can put together my talk for my little conference I'm going to go to. That's like how it's always been done before. And what we're doing is all of that automatically and letting the platform build the database, structure the database, provide the insights and analysis. And where we're evolving that to, especially with our AI capabilities, is to enable an interactive research where our database itself is queryable through natural language engines. And that's what's totally unique as our platform has developed as built and generated a database in this space that you cannot get anywhere else. It doesn't exist in electronic records, doesn't exist in medical claims.
So explain that to me. Walk me down that path of what the uniqueness about that particular area is.
So the key is connecting the treatment delivered, the products that were used, the patient condition, and then the outcomes that we want to measure. And that includes safety, pain, function, mental health, and satisfaction. So those are all the outcomes piece. And that's what the patient contributes, in addition to things about their demographics and their history of treatment and the history of their condition. So we can profile patients based on that. And then the providers are giving us insight into what exactly they are doing. So what treatments are they doing? When are they doing them? How much are they injecting? What's the cellular dose? So we've developed tools that make that even easier to capture that information. And because our platform is bringing that into a structured database, which is the key for AI development, you have to have clean, structured data that you can train a model around. Most electronic health record systems, a lot of the information will exist there, but it exists in a free text form. So it doesn't translate from even one doctor to the next, even in the same practice, let alone like hundreds of doctors.
An electronic scan. That's it.
So it's a scan and it's for compliance. The purpose of the EHR is you have to document.
Yeah, but you have no way to literally at a drop of the hat go, how many of the patients do I have in our space have mesh complications
Yeah.
that I've had to see over the years, over the last 15 years? It's like there's no way to.
No way to get to it specifically. But with what you just described, so let's say it's a mesh complication or something else, in that lane, in that world, there's going to be a ICD-10 code and a CPT code associated with that procedure, and likely it would be billed to the insurance or it's documented somewhere. So that's what's called like the medical claim. So we can get structured data out of medical claims, but in this gray zone of regenerative medicine, most of these treatments don't even have a code. So they're, and nor are they being billed to insurance. So they don't go onto a claims clearinghouse where you can grab that data. And so it's very difficult to even get a pulse on, well, how often are these treatments being delivered, because there isn't going through the payer channels and it doesn't have a comparable home in the electronic health record system. So what we're doing is we're building the framework, and we have built the framework for tracking outcomes and treatments in this space, but we've gone a step beyond that to layer in the patient-reported outcome measures. And we're now seeing Medicare and payers really start to focus on that, especially in orthopedics. So starting this year in orthopedic surgery, it's voluntary, but will be required by 2027 to submit patient-reported outcomes with a certain change from baseline and a certain compliance to responding to those patient-reported outcomes in order just to get paid for doing joint replacement surgery. So the types of measures that they're looking at are exactly the ones that we track on our platform for other orthopedic treatments. But now the entire field is going to be forced to implement things like this in their practice.
Right, because of what you're spending money, and then with the money that you're spending, is it producing results that the patient is more
Right,
satisfied than when they walked in the door?
right, exactly.
And then they'll be able to tease that data out by physician or by group, by technique, by implant, really it's at the end of the day, it's all about the patient and are they happy? Are they satisfied? Do they feel like they w were received what they had anticipated or had desired?
And then you have another kind of layer to that about the physician. So I mentioned the orthopedic surgery, and that's the orthopedic surgery space. When you've got a hammer, everything's a nail. So in orthopedic surgery practices, you're referred to a surgeon because somebody thinks you need to have surgery, and the surgeon's going to come and say, "Yep, you need a joint replacement. We'll get you on the schedule, and you're going to see them for 15 minutes, maybe." And other than that, you don't, good luck to you. So, but what we're seeing now is both a dissatisfaction on the patient side with that. They're like, well, I'm kind of young for that, or maybe I don't want that. Maybe there's something in between. And what about this PRP? And then the surgeons are also saying, yeah, this is becoming a huge hassle, the prior authorizations, all the process just to get reimbursement from insurers for joint replacements. Maybe there's something else that we could do to augment our practice. And now we're seeing surgeons completely leave surgical practice and build regenerative medicine practices because they have orthopedic expertise, but they're so dissatisfied with how they've had to operate with these short, non-holistic interactions with patients where they can't kind of take into account like all the things about a patient. They're just hyper focused on your joint, okay, it's worn down, we're going to replace it. Whereas it could be, well, maybe it's your nutrition, it's your stress levels, it's there's other things that could be optimized in order to, and then we can add this biologic to, extend how much more time you could have before you actually need to have a surgical procedure. But those conversations take 30 minutes, an hour, those, and traditional practices don't get to do that.
Then they bill out, it's $80 and the physician's like, "I just lost, $350."
Yeah. So it's just it's incompatible, and so there's both a patient kind of demand driving things forward this way, and there's the doctors looking for alternatives for their practices. And I'll tell you, I was at the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgery conference last week. On the Tuesday of the meeting, so early in the meeting, there was a Orthobiologics in 2025 and beyond. So just a general, like, what's happening in this space. And I really expected to show up to that with like it, maybe a third full. It's because orthopedic surgeons are still like, no, 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 that's not, anything we need to be thinking about. It's, hocus pocus medicine. It's not validated. And that's the reality of medicine, period. Like you're going to have the majority of doctors are going to wait for the guidelines to come out and wait for the consensus of the peer group. But what happened and what I saw in that room was fully packed, over 400 doctors in the room, standing room only, the entire back wall full, and a line out the door, people trying to see what was on the slides. And to me, that was like a whoa. And even the doctors who I was kind of surrounded by were like, this is very strange for a session at a big giant conference like this to have so much demand. And so I thought, okay, well, I guess maybe it's actually going to happen faster in orthopedic surgery than maybe I thought when I started on this path a couple of years ago now. So I think we're going to see it move much more quickly, and I hope that we are a major influencer in that, especially when it comes to giving assessment on the appropriate dose and guidelines.
I always say my goal is for hopefully that my body breaks down slower than the technology advances. So as long as the technology is in front of my body and the joints and all the things that we, beat on a daily, weekly basis, and then I'm pretty happy. So, I'm excited that you and your company are focused in this area. So you spoke a lot about orthopedics. Other areas that you are also looking at or currently working with, in your field?
Yeah, so probably the first expansion beyond beyond orthopedics was actually in urology and gynecology. So there are you know technology. So PRP, of course, is one that's being used for erectile dysfunction, female pelvic floor dysfunction, but so are things like shockwave therapy. And that's really leveraging a different kind of energy to stimulate the tissue in a variety of ways. So we're doing both registry data and randomized prospective studies that are in this space on our platform right now. And then we also have some interesting treatments in the behavioral health space. So some pain management clinics are utilizing stellate ganglion blocks for treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety. So we have a few different capabilities to help track in the mental health space. But beyond just orthopedics and urology, gynecology, these treatments have applications in wound care, in aesthetics. So we mentioned hair restoration. So a lot of these practices are already set up to offer PRP for knees, which is more complex than PRP for hair. So it's something that they're just like, well, yeah, we could do that too. We've got all equipment. Let's do that too.
And while while you're here, you have some thinning, and we can take care of that too.
Right. So it's starting to it kind of is between a med spa and a regenerative clinic. And then we have some practices that are now layering in hormone replacement therapies and weight loss protocols and different exercise regimens that are good to support that. So for us, the framework is treatment, condition, outcome. That's all of medicine. So how do we and we just kind of follow where our current customer base is, and that's predominantly in this regenerative space. But the use case and the need for the kind of solution we have to offer is broader than that. And where I'm very passionate about serving the providers in medicine, and most technology solutions do not serve the providers. They serve the operational, administrative, compliance layer, and that's because that's where it's easier to. It's hard to sell into that, but it's also easier. It's more straightforward, and it's much more kind of cut and paste type of approach to how you bring your product into the market. Whereas we're dealing with a huge variety of practices and of clinic models. And so that takes some pretty deep expertise in just how does the business of medicine run from a provider perspective, and what are the different specialties and their frame of reference, coming through their medical education and the type of practice that they can deploy. So it does add more, effort, especially in the stage of company that we're in, to really, get traction. But I think what we're seeing and what we hear is nobody's really servicing that, and so we think that that's a big opportunity for us to, double down on our expertise and experience there, and continue to move beyond just the current treatments that we track today.
So do you have the number of people that are inputting that data? What's that percentage that just open an account and are submitting retrospective data, and then those that are that have an IRB that are attached to the the data itself?
It's a very small percentage of, let me think about it. We have over 26,000 active cases in the database today, and probably just a few hundred are in the IRB type study. And this is very much how studies go, right? They look to enroll 30 patients, maybe 100 patients, and it's a focused group because you need that. You need both things. And the benefit of collecting both things on one platform is it's operationally more efficient. So a doctor can do both, be part of a study or be just collecting data in their practice. But we can also, we're collecting it in the same general structure and form. So when you have a study that is done under an IRB with more controls, maybe patient compensation is part of it, all of that, the evidence that's produced off of that study can then be compared to the real world data in a very seamless way. And the holy grail is you've got studies that show one thing and the real world data is congruent with it. It follows suit. So it's not, a study showed this, but the product doesn't actually perform at all in the real world. Like, it doesn't work the same, or we see more complications, or whatever the case might be. So we do both things, but studies by nature are very small, cohorts of patients, and they're very controlled for what they're looking for and what they're um, doing in those for those treatments.
I think to your point though, looking at your platform, one of the things is you have a lot of physicians that might do a physician initiated IRB that then, because they want to get published or because they feel like what they're doing, their surgical technique, the number of patients that they've done it with, the certain subset, for them to then get published, they do the IRB, but then they struggle with the data collection. Where do I put it? How do I put it? Just the whole process, because they might not have, they're not part of a university at this point, but they maybe started in university, right?
We actually have tackled that problem too. Yeah. So we ended up, we were running into many of our customers who've been on the platform for years are saying, I've got all this data now, and I want to publish it, but I'm just a solo practitioner and it's me and my MA and we don't have any time for that and can't do the mining of it.
So how do you do that then? What's your program look like?
So today we have, we decided as a company to go ahead and pursue retrospective IRB approval for all of the data that's been collected in the registry. So we had an IRB review our processes for de-identification. And ultimately, when you're working with retrospective de-identified data, it's considered not human subject research. So we have an IRB that's defined that. And so because of that, now our customers can work with us and say, well, we want to take this kind of slice of that is our data, and we're going to publish it, and they can lean on our approvals or work with the IRB that we've already established. And so, like you said, a few of our customers do have affiliations with academic programs, but we're a year later, we're like, hey, so has it moved off the desk yet? Like, are they looking at your project? Like, when's it going to happen? So we just decided to go ahead and make an investment, on our own to getting that kind of infrastructure set up and a relationship set up with an IRB so that we can enable that. So that's part one. Part two is all of the data processing, the analytics, the just statistically summarizing. Those are the things that we also can produce right in the platform or as an additional service to support those customers.
which is amazing because that's the one thing where they go, okay, well, do I have should I keep going on my data, or do I have something that's already been statistically significant compared to other published data that's currently out on the market, right? So what they're doing is it far ahead of what the current standard of care is, and it's going to get to market a lot faster, and it's going to be adopted a lot faster.
And it puts the companies, and in some cases, we have the medical device companies now involved, especially if it's within the framework of their FDA indication. So where that's working, then the medical device companies can support some of that, some of the expense involved in taking it all the way through the line to getting it into publication. But on the flip side of that, for medical device companies, they're kind of like, cheering on the doctors to a certain degree in these physician initiated studies to say, yes, we want this to be out there, but well, just technically and how they can actually pursue it as a company within the regulatory framework is very difficult. So they're dependent on physicians making the call and saying, I want to study what I'm doing in my practice and put a paper out. And it just so happens that I use this product in my practice. And so there's a good like a synergy, but also a place where we're sort of the firewall between the industry and the clinician, and how data is assembled on the different treatments and products that we track today.
Yeah, because they won't have access to that data. The industry won't. It's going to be coming from the physician. It's de-identified. But then, to your point, you also have this large collection, if it's in a particular space, of other data and what is happening in the rest of the country. But even more so with other medical devices where maybe they have published data, and they probably did it at 10 times the cost. So it's for a smaller company, it's a really a great opportunity for them if they have something innovative to bring that information to market a lot easier.
And then where we're taking it, so the initial kind of phase for us was how do we best support clinicians with the collection effort, then what's in the data? What does it say? Am I doing well? Am I not? And then it's okay, now we want to do some publications. So we're working with large academic programs that are running a number of different studies or off of the registry data. But ultimately, where we take this is direct to consumer. So we want to create a place for patients to be able to find physicians who have successful, good, validated outcomes directly from patients, and be able to match patients to physicians who have treated other patients like them and have a high consistency in the outcome, both in the actual result, the pain and function improvement, but also the satisfaction with treatment and the safety of those treatments.
So is that option available, or is that something that is in the works?
That's in the works, and part of our like our first step towards this, we actually just we exhibited at the Interventional Orthobiologics Foundation meeting, and was really our first presentation of physician uh, top performers. So we identified 24 providers within our database that very specific to single blood derived biologic, no combination. A lot of practices use combination treatment. So we wanted to hone in on sort of that main, the beachhead, the bread and butter PRP by itself. Where's that going well? And the requirements for making that list involved, a high volume of responses, not just at the beginning, but all the way throughout. So those physicians who track a lot of data and do a good job at having patients be responsive over time, then they're going to be just, first level qualification. You have to have enough data to even be measured. And then, yeah, to be considered. And then second to that is, okay, do you have a significant improvement? So are you meeting a minimum threshold of improvement for pain and for function and for satisfaction within the practice? And so we're all, kind of the algorithms that are working.
What's the length of data that you're currently tracking? Because that's always one of the things with regenerative medicine, right? That they go, how long is this gonna last?
Yeah. We're just now starting to see 3-year data come in from early cases on the platform.
Okay.
We have, thousands of responses at 2 years following treatment. Most people see kind of the peak effect between, 6 and 12 months, but we do see some patients that continue to improve over the course of 2 years. And in the biologics, especially, most doctors are, when they're advising their patients that, it takes some time for it to work. It's not like an overnight thing, but some of these new energy device treatments are being layered in early in the healing phase, and those are helping to kind of bring down the pain pretty quickly, and then letting the biologic do its work
Right.
over
It's a
time.
it's a it's
So
a dual approach
yeah.
for those patients.
Yep, that's right. So we do get a lot of questions about that. We get questions both from doctors who are like, "Well, what's everybody else doing? Like, what are the combination treatments?" And those are the most kind of frequently talked about topics at some of the medical conferences I've been to recently. And then we have doctors who are also like, these are many times private practice clinicians, and they're buying the equipment for themselves and setting up their practices. And they might have, be trialing one device versus
Yep.
another. And they're using our platform as a way to say, all right, did it get better? Did it get worse? Did it stay the same? And then they're making their decision based on both the outcome, but also maybe the economics around those devices.
Got it. We talked a little bit about AI. How is that being brought into your solution?
Yeah, so we have a number of ways that is being brought in. So from the pre-processing of the data, so creating, AI, you have to be able to instruct it. You have to be able to say, this is what a good outcome looks like. This is like the kind of buckets of things that people care about. These are types of questions that are going to come about this database. So how it's structured is important, and also how do you create the economics around it. So AI in and of itself, technology can be very, very expensive to operate and maintain, which starts to eliminate the accessibility for the average clinic to get a solution that is advanced. So what we've done is we're really focused on building our data model and all of our pre-processing solutions so that we can deploy low compute resource AI solutions that can accomplish a lot of in-depth analysis and statistical summaries, because a lot of that lifting has been done in the machine learning pre-processing layer. So we're using it at that step, and we've also identified some opportunities to leverage visual extract tools that we've built into our platform to help streamline getting data into the platform. So a couple of things that are also challenging in smaller private practices is the EHR systems that they deploy. While everybody is supposed to be on FHIR HL7 framework for data interoperability, that's like the buzzwords of the industry. The reality is most instances have some level of customization or require some level of configuring with the vendor of those EHR platforms. And if you're not a big player, you're probably not going to get a call back is the reality. And so even where we've had motivation to do it, we're finding that it's not all EHRs are very amenable to the type of practice we work with in establishing even a basic integration. So our platform has to be standalone. And then you have other pieces of this where like the cellular dosing. This is the holy grail of the field is what's the right dose of cells to deliver? And nobody has an answer that's like concrete yet. And maybe it won't ever be. We'll see what the data says. But the machine that is used to measure cellular dosage is a standalone machine that can't be deployed in a regular lab. So you can't just send off your lab results and that data is in a lab system, a data system somewhere. It doesn't meet the it doesn't it's a square peg in a round hole. So it's typically this machine that sits on its own and it produces a PDF printout that gets attached to the patient record. So it's just an image. Historically our platform the staff had to type in the results from that report into our platform, and we made it as simple as possible. But for us, if answering the question around dose is like the most important thing that we can be, producing, then I want to make it even easier to get that data in. And because those systems are not connected to anything, we decided, well, let's just build a tool that reads the report and maps the data. And that's exactly what we've got now is a way to read the report. So leverage AI image processing and then add to our database. Where we go next is what I was referencing in this, interactive natural language query of our database. And I think we're all aware now that you have a chat with AI for long enough and you're like, this is totally made up, this is terrible, what are you saying? Well, this is not trustworthy. And so in order to make a trustworthy chat experience, you have to have high quality pre-processed data that already is structured to respond to the questions that you expect to get. And what we're doing is building that. And we will be the only ones, the first to market, and certainly in regenerative medicine with this kind of a model that can support, it seems simple. A doctor might want to say, hey, how many cases of PRP have I done in the last year? Okay, that seems like an easy question. All right, well, and how many, and which kinds of patients respond best to those treatments? Now that's getting a little more complicated. There's a
That's right.
lot of
Right.
things you have
So now I
to.
gotta scrape all that data to then start getting
Or
yours.
you're saying, I'm seeing, Mrs. Jones and she's 50 years old and she's had, tried this treatment before and that treatment before. And now it's great. But we need to have all that data there for it to say, let's survey the database and we're going to isolate to this cohort of patients. And this is the outcome. And okay, well, what outcome do you care about? Does she want to have, high function? Is it pain? What was her baseline? So then you start to add even more complexity to an analytics process. So we're doing all of that already in our, all of these answers are accessible today in our data. But how we want to make them even more accessible is really taking it the 10-yard line. Like, can we enable you? And I kind of use it based on what I get. The doctors are texting me, hey, I'm giving a talk on this. What data do we have about it? so like, okay, you can chat with my AI for that. So that's where we're taking the AI so that it can produce, the right content, right response based on what that doctor is trying to do with it. Whether it's I'm preparing for an individual patient consult, or I'm going to give a CME talk, or I want to publish a paper, write my paper
Yeah.
for me
And
and get it all the way
he
there.
might not have
Yeah.
he might not have seen a particular patient with this condition, with this background. And so he's asking, hey, where do I start with this? And
Yeah.
he's putting in all that
Exactly.
information to then say, okay, there's 5 cases like it. These are the ranges.
Yeah.
This is where I would recommend starting. And you're like, that's amazing. Cause
Right.
it was able to pull all of it. But to your
But
point, there's
then
so
turning it
much.
into content too.
That's
And
right.
so we have it, today we have these nice dashboards that are really like formatted for presentations. And what we can do is have our AI really help the doctor configure those and produce, the visuals or the content that they want for, we're using within their practice or using for their practice marketing, just sort of where we are ultimately evolving is how do you create the right kind of education materials to, support what it is that the practice is doing and the kind of patient that they ultimately want to see in the practice.
Yeah. And so, if I look at one of the things that you guys are tackling, which is this area of transparency, and then how do you get those best outcomes for the physician, for the patient. And one of the other things that I thought was fantastic in doing research on your website was your pricing model. Can you walk me through, because you guys are very transparent on it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. It's not the call me, right?
Yeah.
Like
It-
we work with, 2,500, other institutions, call for a quote. It's,
yeah.
it's, it upfront, walk us through, because I think that's important for someone to say, okay, this is something I have an appetite for, because anytime that it says call for a quote, you go, oh geez,
You're
how
like,
much
oh,
is this
okay.
going to cost? Right.
Well, I think especially in this space, that's kind of the way is because everything is customized. It's like, okay, well, what are you trying to study? And let's get this person in here and that person in here. And we're going to come up with this like custom solution for every single one of these studies. And that's how like the clinical research organization industry has conditioned the market to say it actually needs to be this whole very big elaborate thing. And or we're going to charge on this per case basis. And we're going to, because it's geared for studies that have a lot going on and a lot of expense. For us, we want it to be totally frictionless for you to be able to collect data in your practice. And we need to make it, affordable no matter the kind of practice. So we built a three-tiered model with our, lowest level subscription being $250 a year. And that gives doctors the ability to track unlimited data. So we don't put restrictions on, how many messages can be sent out to patients or how many patients can you enroll, because it goes against what our mission is and our vision, which is track everybody and let the data speak for itself. Don't and if we create something that makes it disincentivizes adding patients to the platform,
Yeah.
then we're
Don't
not
put don't
living up to
don't put
that.
Mrs. Jones in. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
put a little sticker on every chart of every
Yes,
person I want
exactly.
in the to enroll, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what you
So
normally do is if they got a
that's
little sticker, then
right. That's the
then you
one.
put them in the registry.
Yep. And so I think of this entry level plan, our starter plan, and it really just it's like saving your money. Just start banking data, make an investment. The data will be there. We don't put any restrictions on the way that the platform functions. So we're still collecting satisfaction. We're collecting all of the outcome measures. We're open to all the treatments that we track. But what they don't get with starter that they get with our essentials level plan, which is $1,500 a year, is the ability to see all of their data aggregated into a nice visual and all the summaries. With Starter and any of the data collection, any of the plans, they can see individual patient outcomes and individual patient responses. So we don't want to, prevent you from seeing what each patient says. But when it comes to like that aggregate, more advanced analytics and all the processing that we do, then that's where the next level of cost comes in. So that's our practice essentials plan, gives them those basic aggregate reporting tools and visualizations on the data that they generate within their practice. And then our next level up would be our performance subscription. And that enables all of the advanced analytics and benchmarking capabilities with our global registry. So, with the over 26,000 cases that we have collected so far in the database today, a doctor can activate our $4,500 per year subscription, which for us, if you're able to attract, one or two, maybe three new patients to the practice because you're collecting data, you're providing more insight into what the patient can expect, and they're able to say, okay, I'll move forward with this treatment because other people like me are getting this level of result, and it's then that's really the ROI that we see for these higher level subscriptions, but also for the practice's own ability to, you mentioned maybe they don't see this kind of patient as often, but in our database, we might have hundreds or thousands of that kind of patient. So they're able to go and see, how does a patient who gets this treatment with this condition, how do they tend to do? And that can be helpful for a purely like do the treatment or not decision, or a setting the expectation, because each one of these treatments comes with a cost in and of itself. And if a patient is like, well, this is the cost I want to be in, but this is my expectation for the outcome, well, it might not match, and you might have to say, well, instead of 100% improvement, you're going to see a 25% improvement, but at lower cost, whatever the case.
I was able to look at the database and they can sit down with the patient and be more confident in saying, other people, other physicians that have done it across the country have experienced this. You can expect a 4 to 5 point gain, or reduction in your pain, depending on how you judge that threshold.
Now we're also seeing doctors start to use, and groups of doctors start to use this data in conversations with regional, like large self-funded employers. So getting payment for treatment from employers who fund their own health plan, and they're able to say, here's our, thousands of cases we've done, but also we track data in this big global registry, and our outcomes are on par or better than everybody else doing PRP in the US. So it's helpful for having those kind of negotiations with potential payers and referrers into the practice as well.
And it could be, this is how much this treatment option costs, and this is the average of duration of, say, extending the life of a person's knee so they don't need surgery. Now is this a better plan for your customer, that it'll actually save you money, or they could all go get knee replacements, and what that costs, right? That's a pretty easy dollar amount to put it on. So no, that's a great option for, the physician to have, but then also, uh, for the patient to hopefully, we're gonna start seeing these things move in this direction. It was just like years back, going to a chiropractor, that was never covered, or acupuncture, that was never covered, right? But now if you look at a lot of the plans, they go, yes, you can go to a chiropractor, you know, once a month and we pay this much, or you can go to a acupuncture, or, they know that if you go to the gym, there's plans that'll pay you to go to the gym because they know that actually helps your health. And so if we keep you healthy, and we keep you out of the hospital, and we keep you out of the clinic, everybody wins.
That's where we see this going, and nobody gets there without data, and there's nobody else really putting the data together in this. There's other large organizations like franchise type organizations that have collected data on their own, kind of provider group and their own products that they offer, but nobody has done it in a way that we're doing it now, which is just all these products and all these practices that are unrelated to each other, and now creating a standard framework for how to evaluate performance. That is the key to the way that this field can actually progress and open more access, so you don't just have to be, a cash flush, patient. You can have your health plan cover some of this.
So if you're a physician and you're watching this podcast, so what are some things that they should be considering? And then what's the best approach to engage with your company?
Yeah, so today we don't have the consumer, the provider locator, but that's coming. That's something that we have on our roadmap this year. But I would say for patients, we have started to all doctors who especially contribute significant volumes of data into the platform, they do have a Data Biologics contributor badge. So patients who are looking at these treatments, that's really the first question they should ask a provider is, how, do you track your data, and what are your outcomes? And sometimes practices might still be just getting started by adding this. So in that case, you want to understand from that doctor, well, what kind of training have you done? How do you evaluate which products that you're using? What's the techniques that you deploy? There's a lot of a lot of the training today is about how do you do these treatments with, ultrasound guidance and being much more precise with the approach, but also your diagnosis, like, what is that clinic doing to work up and understand what your problem might be? So a lot of the red flags in the space are you're getting offered a treatment and you don't even have any scans or any like diagnosis. That's you're just like I'm in pain. Well, pain can be caused by a lot of different things. So if you're being sold a treatment without getting that kind of more holistic workup, then it's a gamble. It's a total roll of the dice if it's going to work for you or not. And then I would say the next question, is how do you manage, quality control of the biologic that you're offering? And are you measuring the dose that you're going to receive as a patient? The practices who have really embraced the both the training and the best practice and the sharing, like kind of the evolution of it, they're all measuring that. They all have made investments in the type of equipment that you need in order to measure that and be able to assess the quality of the biologic. So I would say those are probably like the key things that stand out if you're a patient looking at these treatments, is really asking questions around how often do they do this and what kinds of investments have they made in training and in the equipment that you need in order to offer these kinds of treatments.
And so if you're a physician, what's a good way to engage with your company?
Yeah, so definitely could come to our website. We have a book a demo link that'll take you immediately to a calendar and can engage with one of us. Certainly can reach out to me direct on either on LinkedIn or my email is leah@databiologics.com. So if they're interested in learning more, they can reach out to us there as well.
It's been a very insightful conversation, and Data Biologics is truly redefining how regenerative medicine is validated and, of course, marketed. And it's exciting to see how this real world data is driving transparency with having better patient outcomes. And so, for our listeners, if you're a provider looking to bring data driven decision making to your practice, or if you just want to explore how evidence based marketing can help you grow your patient base, head over to databiologics.com to learn more about the solutions. And of course, a big thanks to our sponsors, Xive7 and Superpatch, for supporting this episode. And if you found this conversation valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share, because the more we demystify pelvic health and regenerative medicine, the more patients and providers benefit. So, Leah, thanks again for joining us. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
No, thank you so much. It's always great to talk to somebody who has a good pulse on the field and is as passionate about seeing it progress as I am. So thanks for the opportunity to share what we're up to. And I look forward to another conversation in the future.
I love it. We'll have you back.